In a quiet suburban neighborhood, nestled between manicured lawns and perfectly aligned flower beds, I found myself at the center of a peculiar conflict that would challenge my sense of individuality and ignite a spirited debate about personal expression. It all began with my beloved lawn gnome, a whimsical little figure that had proudly occupied a corner of my yard for years. To me, this gnome was more than just a decoration. It was a source of joy, a conversation starter with neighbors, and a piece of my personality that I cherished. However, my appreciation for this quirky ornament quickly turned into a controversial issue when the Homeowners Association, or HOA, decided to take action against my innocent lawn companion. Their reasoning was rooted in a strict adherence to community guidelines that prioritized uniformity and decorum above all else. The HOA deemed my gnome an eyesore, claiming it clashed with the overall aesthetic they enforced within our neighborhood. They argued that such decor could diminish property values and disrupt the carefully curated image of our community. When I first received the notification from the HOA regarding the ban on my lawn gnome, I felt an array of emotions washing over me: confusion, anger, and disbelief. How could they target something so harmless? It felt like an attack on my personal freedom to express myself in my own yard. I imagined my neighbors glancing at my lawn gnome, perhaps chuckling or sharing a smile as they walked by. To me, it was an endearing fixture, not an affront to anyone's sensibilities. Yet here I was, facing the cold reality of bureaucratic regulations that seemed intent on stifling creativity and self-expression. As I read through the HOA's letter, it became clear they were not simply asking me to remove the gnome. They were enforcing a mandate that emphasized conformity over character. They cited vague guidelines about acceptable decorations without providing clear definitions or criteria for what constituted acceptable versus unacceptable. It felt arbitrary and unjust. In my mind, the joy of homeownership should come with the freedom to make one's living space reflect who you are, not just fit into some cookie-cutter mold dictated by an organization. After grappling with this unexpected conflict for several days, I realized that I had two choices: either comply with their demands and remove my beloved gnome, or push back against what I felt was an infringement on my rights as a homeowner. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became to stand up for my right to express myself in my own yard. This wasn't just about a lawn ornament anymore. It was about asserting my individuality against the backdrop of an increasingly homogenized neighborhood. I began to brainstorm ways to make a statement that would not only reclaim my right to decorate but also challenge the authority of the HOA. It was during one of these brainstorming sessions that inspiration struck me like lightning. If they wanted to ban my little gnome, then how about I counter their decision with something truly unforgettable? Perhaps rather than replacing my gnome with another small ornament compliant with their rules, I could go in entirely the opposite direction. That's when the idea of erecting a 14-foot statue emerged, a bold move that would undoubtedly draw attention and provoke discussion among both neighbors and HOA board members alike. The sheer size of such a statue would dwarf any concerns over aesthetics. It would be impossible to ignore or overlook. In essence, it would be a monument to defiance, a larger-than-life representation of individualism in the face of conformity. As excitement bubbled within me at this daring plan, I began envisioning what kind of statue would best convey my message. Would it be whimsical like my gnome? Or perhaps something more profound, reflective of deeper themes like freedom or creativity? Regardless of its design, one thing was certain: this statue would symbolize not just a personal victory, but also an audacious stand against overly restrictive regulations that sought to control trivial aspects of life. In those moments, as ideas flowed freely and plans began to form in my mind, I couldn't help but feel invigorated by the prospect of taking charge of my own narrative. No longer would I allow myself to be constrained by arbitrary rules set forth by an organization whose understanding of community appeared limited and stifling. Instead, I envisioned a vibrant display that would invite curiosity rather than scorn, a statement piece that encouraged discussion about what it truly means to live in a community while still honoring one's individuality. With renewed determination fueling me every step of the way, I prepared myself for what lay ahead, A journey filled with challenges and triumphs as I fought not only for personal expression, but also for the right to celebrate who we are in our own homes without fear of retribution from those who may not share our vision. Little did I know that this bold decision would ultimately lead me down an unexpected path filled with intrigue and laughter, one that would forever change how our neighborhood viewed personal expression. The day I received the letter from the Homeowners Association banning my lawn gnome was one that left a lasting mark on my emotional landscape. As I sat down with the crisp paper in hand, reading the carefully worded yet coldly impersonal message, a wave of confusion washed over me. How could a small, cheerful figure, a symbol of whimsy and joy, be deemed a violation of community standards? The gnome had been a beloved fixture in my yard, a playful companion that sparked smiles among my neighbors and provided a sense of warmth to my home. Initially, I felt anger bubbling up inside me. It was hard to fathom that an organization meant to foster community spirit could take such a harsh stance against something so innocuous. My gnome wasn't just an ornament. It represented my personality, my values, and my approach to life. It was an expression of creativity in a world that often felt constrained by rules and regulations. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like the HOA was not only attacking my gnome, but also undermining my right to express myself. As days passed, the initial anger morphed into a deep sense of disappointment. I found myself reflecting on what it meant to live in a place where conformity was prioritized over individuality. Each time I looked out at the empty spot where my gnome once stood, I felt an ache in my heart, a palpable loss. It wasn't just about losing a lawn decoration. It was about losing a piece of myself and the joy it brought into my life. Even friends who visited would comment on how they loved seeing the gnome when they came over, adding to my feelings of isolation and loss. I began to question the very fabric of our community. Was this really what we had come to? A place where creative expression was stifled by an authoritarian set of guidelines? I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something fundamentally wrong with a system that sought to eliminate personal touches in favor of bland uniformity. It felt as if I were being told that my home wasn't truly mine. Rather, it was merely an extension of someone else's vision for what it should look like. The emotional impact of this ban extended beyond mere frustration. It seeped into other aspects of my life. My enthusiasm for home improvement projects dwindled as the joy of curating a personal space turned into anxiety over what could be deemed acceptable or unacceptable by HOA standards. Friends noticed a change in me, my once bubbly demeanor dulled by the weight of this conflict. Conversations shifted from lighthearted banter about neighborhood happenings to discussions tinged with bitterness about rules that seemed designed to suppress rather than uplift. Moreover, I became acutely aware of the divide growing between myself and some neighbors who appeared to support the HOA's decision. Their acceptance of these stringent rules felt like betrayal at times, further isolating me in my struggle. I began to wonder if they truly valued individuality, or if they simply preferred the safety and predictability that came with conformity. The whole situation made me feel like an outsider within my own neighborhood, a place I had always considered home. As I wrestled with these feelings, there were moments when doubt crept in. Would it be easier to simply remove the gnome and comply with the HOA's demands? Was it worth fighting for self-expression if it meant facing backlash from neighbors or potential fines? These thoughts gnawed at me as I weighed my options, creating an internal battle between desire and practicality. Yet amid this turmoil, there emerged a flicker of resolve within me, a glimmering conviction that pushed me toward action instead of submission. The longer I pondered over the ban, the more determined I became to reclaim not just my lawn gnome, but also a sense of agency in defining what home meant for me. This wasn't merely about one ornament. It symbolized something larger, the fight for personal freedom against an oppressive force. I realized that allowing myself to be defeated wouldn't just mean losing a cherished decoration. It would signify surrendering to a mindset that discouraged creativity and individuality altogether. It was then that inspiration struck me with fervor. If they wanted to strip away my beloved gnome, then perhaps I should respond by making an even bolder statement. As this newfound determination began to take root within me, I found comfort in envisioning how I could transform this situation into an opportunity for greater expression rather than defeat. What if instead of succumbing to the pressure imposed by the HOA, I embraced their challenge head-on? What if I could turn this narrative around and create something so grand that it would spark conversations not just within our neighborhood but beyond? With each passing day, as I contemplated these possibilities, my spirits began to lift ever so slightly. The emotional journey from sadness and frustration gradually morphed into something more empowering, a call to assert myself against conformity and reclaim joy through creative expression. Little did I know that this would set off a chain reaction leading me toward an audacious plan, erecting a 14-foot statue that would stand tall not only as a testament to defiance, but also as an emblem of individuality in our tightly woven community fabric. After grappling with the emotional fallout from the HOA's ban on my lawn gnome, a sense of clarity began to emerge within me. It was time to make a decision, one that would define not only my relationship with HOA, but also my perspective on what it meant to live in a community. I could either quietly acquiesce to their demands or take a stand for my right to express myself in my own space. Deep down, I knew which path I needed to choose. The more I reflected on the situation, the more I realized that this wasn't just about my lawn gnome. It was about something much larger, the value of individuality and the right to personal expression. The HOA's decision felt like an attempt to erase the uniqueness that each homeowner brings to their property. It struck me as unfair that an organization could dictate how we decorate our homes, stifling creativity in favor of uniformity. As I mulled over my options, a flicker of rebellion ignited within me. I'd always prided myself on being someone who embraced creativity and uniqueness, and here I was, faced with the possibility of surrendering that identity to appease a set of rules that made little sense. I decided then and there that pushing back against the HOA was not just necessary, it was essential. With this newfound determination fueling my thoughts, I began brainstorming ways to make my statement loud and clear. Simply removing the gnome would feel like capitulating to their demands. Instead, I wanted to send a message that would resonate throughout the neighborhood. If you want conformity, I thought, then let's see how you handle something truly outlandish. That's when the idea of erecting a 14-foot statue came into sharp focus, a bold move designed to challenge not only the HOA, but also anyone who believed personal expression should be confined by arbitrary rules. Imagining this towering statue filled me with excitement and purpose. What should it represent? Should it retain some element of whimsy similar to my gnome? Or should it carry deeper symbolism about freedom and creativity? As I contemplated these questions, I felt invigorated by the thrill of creating something magnificent, something that would capture attention and provoke conversation. The logistics of bringing this vision to life soon consumed my thoughts. How would I acquire such a large statue? Should it be custom-made? If so, where could I find an artist capable of translating my ideas into something tangible? These questions swirled around in my mind as I began researching artists and firms specializing in large-scale sculptures. However, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the challenges ahead, I felt empowered by them. Each step toward realizing this plan felt like a deliberate act of defiance against those who sought to suppress my individuality. As I moved forward with my plans, I reached out to friends and family for support. Many were initially taken aback by the audacity of my idea, but quickly came around once they understood its significance. They rallied behind me, offering time, resources, and even encouragement when moments of doubt crept in. Their enthusiasm reinforced my resolve. This wasn't just a battle for me. It was a movement toward reclaiming our rights as homeowners to decorate our spaces authentically. In parallel, I found myself engaging with neighbors about their perspectives on HOAs and community standards. Some expressed agreement with the HOA's regulations, believing that maintaining uniformity preserved property values and neighborhood charm. Yet others share their frustrations with these stringent rules, how they felt stifled by regulations that didn't allow them to express their identities through their homes. These conversations fueled my conviction. There was a significant portion of our community longing for personal expression but feeling too intimidated by the HOA's authority. As word spread about my plan for a 14-foot statue, the community began buzzing with curiosity and anticipation. There were whispers, some supportive and others skeptical, but all were intrigued by what this bold move might entail. My project became a topic of discussion at neighborhood gatherings, sparking debates over artistic freedom versus community standards. In many ways, it felt like I had unwittingly become a catalyst for change in our neighborhood. Despite some pushback from staunch HOA supporters who continued to defend their strict guidelines, I remained steadfast in my mission. Each opposing comment only strengthened my resolve. After all, if they viewed me as a threat to their ideal vision of conformity, then perhaps I was doing something right. The thought motivated me further. If anything would inspire dialogue about individuality within our community, it had already begun. In those days leading up to the statue's installation, anticipation mixed with anxiety coursed through me like electricity. Would the HOA react negatively? Would it try to block this bold statement before it ever saw the light of day? Yet amidst these worries lay an undeniable excitement, a sense that this project represented more than just one homeowner standing up against an organization. It symbolized a collective yearning for freedom of expression within our community. As plans solidified and artists began sketching designs based on my ideas, I felt invigorated by every step forward, a thrilling journey toward reclaiming joy in creative expression while pushing back against restrictive norms. And though uncertainty loomed ahead like an ominous shadow cast by an unyielding authority figure waiting at the gates, there was also hope shining brightly above. A new chapter was unfolding as I prepared not only to unveil a striking 14-foot statue, but also embark on an extraordinary journey toward empowerment and self-discovery. As the idea of a 14-foot statue began to take shape in my mind, I felt an exhilarating rush of creativity and purpose. This wasn't just about erecting a large piece of art in my yard. It was about making a bold statement that would challenge the norms imposed by the HOA and spark conversations about individuality within our community. I envisioned something striking, a symbol of freedom that could resonate with anyone who had ever felt constrained by rules and regulations. The first step in bringing this concept to life was to consider the statue's design. I wanted it to be eye-catching, thought-provoking, and, above all, meaningful. After much contemplation, I decided on a design that would blend whimsy with deeper significance. Inspired by my original lawn gnome, I envisioned a larger-than-life figure embodying playfulness and creativity. However, rather than merely replicating the gnome, I imagined a fantastical creature, perhaps a hybrid of various mythical beings, that would capture the essence of imagination and joy while standing tall as a testament to individuality. I spent hours sketching ideas and gathering inspiration from various sources. I looked at everything from mythical creatures and folklore to modern art sculptures that conveyed strong messages about self-expression. One design caught my attention, a whimsical creature with oversized wings and a playful grin, symbolizing the idea of soaring above societal expectations and restrictions. The wings would represent freedom and the ability to rise above challenges, while the playful expression would invite curiosity and smiles from passers-by. Once I had a clear vision in mind, I began searching for artists who could bring this concept to fruition. It was essential for me to find someone who not only possessed the technical skills necessary to create such a large installation, but also understood the underlying message I wanted to convey. After reaching out to several local artists, I finally found one whose portfolio resonated with me, an experienced sculptor known for his imaginative and vibrant pieces. When we met to discuss my idea, I felt an instant connection. He listened intently as I shared my vision, nodding enthusiastically as I described the whimsical creature and its symbolism. He understood that this project was about more than just creating a statue. It was about making a statement, a celebration of individuality that would defy the constraints imposed by the HOA. Together, we began brainstorming how to translate my sketches into a three-dimensional work of art. As we delved into discussions about materials, dimensions, and colors, my excitement grew exponentially. We decided on using lightweight yet durable materials such as fiberglass for construction, allowing for easier installation while still achieving the desired grandeur. The vibrant colors we chose would make the statue pop against the backdrop of my yard, ensuring it stood out as a beacon of creativity amidst the sea of conformity. Throughout this process, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of empowerment. Each conversation with the artist reinforced my belief that this statue would serve not only as an act of defiance, but also as an opportunity for dialogue within our community. It was thrilling to think that something so whimsical could provoke thought about personal freedom and expression. As we finalized plans for the sculpture's design, logistics became crucial. We discussed how we would safely transport and install such a massive piece while ensuring it met any local guidelines regarding height restrictions or zoning regulations. Although these considerations were daunting, they only fueled my determination further. If there was any chance of pushback from the HOA or neighbors once it was unveiled, I wanted to be fully prepared. In parallel with planning the statue's creation, I began considering how best to introduce it to our community when it was finally complete. What if we held an unveiling event? An opportunity for neighbors to gather together, perhaps even fostering conversations over wine and snacks, could turn this project into more than just an installation. It could become a communal celebration of individuality and creativity. My mind raced with ideas for decorations, banners proclaiming "Celebrate Individuality" or "Art is Freedom." As excitement built within me at these possibilities, I realized that this statue could become a symbol not just for me, but for everyone in our neighborhood yearning to express themselves authentically. With each passing day leading up to its construction and unveiling, anticipation swelled in my chest like a balloon ready to burst with color. The concept of this 14-foot statue transformed from mere sketches on paper into something tangible, an embodiment of resilience against conformity and a vibrant reminder that our homes should reflect who we are as individuals. As plans solidified and timelines were set in motion, I couldn't shake off an exhilarating mix of nerves and excitement. Would my neighbors embrace this bold statement? Would they see beyond its whimsy into what it represented? And most importantly, would the HOA respond with resistance or perhaps reconsider their stance on personal expression within our community? The journey toward creating this statue became more than just reclaiming my right to decorate. It evolved into an opportunity for transformation, a chance not only for me, but also for those around me, to celebrate creativity together. And though challenges lay ahead, from navigating regulations to addressing potential backlash, there was no turning back now. This monumental project was well on its way toward becoming an unforgettable centerpiece in our neighborhood narrative, a testament carved in stone and fiberglass that proudly declared, "Individuality matters." As the design for my 14-foot statue began to take shape, the next crucial step was navigating the logistics of its installation. This was not just a matter of plopping a large object in my yard. It involved careful planning and coordination to ensure that everything went smoothly and that I adhered to any local regulations or HOA guidelines. The process felt daunting, but it also ignited a sense of excitement as I prepared to bring my bold vision to life. First on my list was understanding the local zoning laws and any restrictions related to the height and placement of outdoor structures. While I had a clear vision of where I wanted the statue to stand, I needed to ensure that this location complied with all regulations. I reached out to the local zoning office, where a friendly representative patiently walked me through the guidelines. Fortunately, I discovered that my intended spot in the front yard met all requirements. No height restrictions applied, and it was far enough from property lines to avoid any disputes with neighbors. With the legalities sorted out, my attention turned to logistics surrounding the actual installation of the statue itself. Given its size, transporting it from the artist's studio to my home will require careful coordination. The artist and I discussed options for transportation, ultimately deciding that a flatbed truck would be the best choice. We scheduled a day for transport that worked for both of us, ensuring we had ample time for installation once the statue arrived. On the day of transport, an electric mix of anticipation and nerves coursed through me. I stood in my yard as the flatbed truck approached, my heart racing at the thought of finally seeing my vision come to life. As the truck rolled up, I could see the outline of the statue carefully covered with protective padding, a tease that only heightened my excitement. As we unloaded the statue, I quickly realized that its sheer size was even more impressive in person than I had imagined. It towered above me, its vibrant colors gleaming in the sunlight. My neighbors watched from their yards, their curiosity piqued by the spectacle unfolding before them. A mix of reactions washed over me. awe from those who appreciated art and skepticism from others who seemed concerned about what this bold move might mean for our community. Once the statue was off the truck, it was time for installation. The artist and his team had devised a plan for securing it safely into place while ensuring it remained stable against wind and weather. They dug a deep hole in my yard to create a sturdy foundation and used concrete to anchor the statue securely. As they worked methodically, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. This was not just an installation, but rather a significant act of defiance against conformity. Throughout this process, I noticed several neighbors gathering near my property line, their expressions ranging from intrigue to apprehension. While some offered words of encouragement or compliments on the design, others exchanged worried glances as if anticipating some kind of fallout from our HOA. Their mixed reactions felt palpable in the air, a reminder that this project was not merely about a whimsical statue, but about challenging norms and sparking dialogue within our community. As installation progressed, I seized opportunities to engage with onlookers. I explained my motivation behind creating such a grand piece, how it represented individuality and freedom of expression in a neighborhood often defined by rigid standards. Many seemed genuinely interested, nodding along as they began to understand that this wasn't just about one person's desire for artistic expression. It was about encouraging everyone to embrace their uniqueness. Once securely anchored into place, we took a step back to admire our work. My heart swelled with satisfaction as I gazed up at this magnificent statue now standing proudly in my yard. It felt surreal. After months of brainstorming, planning, and overcoming obstacles, we had finally reached this moment. However, as we completed final touches and cleaned up the surrounding area, reality set in. Though installation was complete, an inevitable confrontation with the HOA loomed ahead. Would they appreciate what this piece represented? Or would they see it as an affront to their ideals? The uncertainty weighed heavily on my mind as I prepared for what lay ahead. In anticipation of potential backlash from HOA members or neighbors concerned about property values or aesthetics, I decided it would be wise to prepare myself with information and support. Armed with facts about artistic expression and community values gathered during conversations with fellow residents who shared similar frustrations with HOA regulations, I felt ready to advocate for my rights. The next few days were filled with mixed emotions, anticipation tinged with anxiety, as word spread throughout our neighborhood about the new addition in my yard. Many expressed excitement and enthusiasm about witnessing such a bold statement come to life, while others cautiously waited to see how things would unfold. As I navigated these complex dynamics within our community, the mingling of support and skepticism, I remained firm in my belief that art has an essential role in fostering dialogue about individuality and personal expression. And while there were challenges ahead concerning how both neighbors and HOA representatives would respond, one thing became abundantly clear. This statue wasn't merely an addition to my yard. It symbolized everything we strive for when pursuing freedom within our homes, the right to be unapologetically ourselves amidst pressures to conform. With every passing day, since installation brought new conversations bubbling up around this striking figure now gracing my front yard, the journey toward reclaiming personal expression had only just begun. The day my 14-foot statue was finally installed marked a pivotal moment in our neighborhood. As I stood in my yard, watching the vibrant colors shimmer in the sunlight, I felt a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. This bold statement piece was not only a celebration of creativity and individuality, but also an invitation for dialogue within our community. Little did I know just how varied and intense the reactions would be. In the days following the installation, the statue quickly became a focal point of conversation among neighbors. Some were genuinely thrilled, approaching me with excitement bubbling over. "This is incredible," they would exclaim, their eyes wide with wonder as they took in the whimsical design of the towering creature. Others expressed admiration for my courage to push back against the HOA's restrictions, commending me for standing up for personal expression in such a bold way. Their support felt like a warm embrace, reinforcing my belief that art and individuality had a rightful place within our community. However, it wasn't long before I began to notice a more polarized reaction emerging. While many embraced the statue as a symbol of artistic freedom, others voiced concerns about its impact on property values and neighborhood aesthetics. Some neighbors who had previously been friendly now eyed me with uncertainty, their expressions tinged with skepticism. "Do you really think this fits with the rest of our homes?" one neighbor asked hesitantly during a casual chat over the fence. Their question struck a nerve, making me aware that not everyone shared my vision of what our community could represent. It became apparent that the statue had stirred up feelings about conformity versus individuality, an age-old debate that seemed to resonate deeply within our suburban enclave. Those who thrived on uniformity felt threatened by the boldness of my artistic expression, fearing it would disrupt the carefully curated image of our neighborhood. The HOA's response was not long in coming. Just days after the statue was erected, I received an official letter from them outlining their concerns. The tone was disapproving yet measured, emphasizing that while they recognized my right to express myself, they deemed the statue an excessive addition to our neighborhood. They cited vague guidelines regarding decorum and community aesthetics, suggesting that such an installation could potentially lower property values and set a precedent for other homeowners to follow suit. Reading through this letter filled me with frustration and determination all over again. The HOA's reaction felt predictable yet disheartening. Rather than engaging in meaningful dialogue about art and expression, they chose to focus on maintaining control over our community's appearance. Their response only reinforced my resolve to stand firm against their authority. In light of these developments, I decided it was time to organize a neighborhood gathering, an opportunity for open discussion about the statue and what it represented for all of us. I wanted to create a space where residents could voice their thoughts openly without fear of judgment or reprisal. I reached out to neighbors who had expressed support for my endeavors, inviting them to join me in hosting an informal barbecue at my house. On the day of the gathering, I prepared food, set up chairs in my yard around the statue, and decorated with colorful banners celebrating creativity and individuality. As neighbors arrived, I could sense both excitement and apprehension in the air, tension brewing beneath the surface as people gathered around this new centerpiece in our community. As we mingled over burgers and drinks, conversations began flowing naturally. Many shared their thoughts on art and self-expression. Some recounted their own struggles with HOA regulations or experiences feeling stifled by conformist ideals. The atmosphere transformed into one of camaraderie as we found common ground through shared frustrations about how rules could inhibit personal expression. Eventually, someone brought up concerns similar to those raised by the HOA, questions about whether such installations might lead others down a path toward excessive decor or chaos within our neighborhood. However, rather than shutting down these discussions, I encouraged open dialogue, asking everyone how they envisioned our community's identity moving forward. As voices chimed in from various perspectives, some advocating for preserving uniformity while others championed creative expression, I realized that this gathering had sparked something powerful, an opportunity for us all to redefine what it meant to live together as neighbors while embracing diverse viewpoints. By the end of the evening, something remarkable happened. A consensus began forming around recognizing both sides' valid points. While some residents appreciated structure and order in maintaining property values, others yearned for spaces that celebrated individuality and creativity. Together, we brainstormed ideas on how we could strike a balance between these two worlds. Perhaps we could host seasonal art fairs showcasing local artists or encourage more whimsical decorations at holiday times. As laughter filled the air amidst lively discussions surrounding art and personal expression throughout that evening under the watchful gaze of my 14-foot statue, it became clear that this bold move had not only challenged norms but also ignited conversations essential for fostering understanding within our community. In many ways, my statue achieved what I had hoped it would. It brought us together, not just as individuals living side by side, but as a collective exploring new possibilities for connection amid differing perspectives on how we define home. And while challenges still lay ahead, especially concerning potential further pushback from the HOA, the experience reinforced one undeniable truth. Art has an extraordinary ability to unite us even amidst differing opinions, allowing us all to forge deeper connections through understanding each other's stories along this journey toward embracing individuality together. As the dust settled from the neighborhood gathering and conversations about my towering statue continued to unfold, I braced myself for the inevitable response from the homeowners association. I had anticipated this moment, knowing that the HOA would not remain silent forever regarding what they viewed as a challenge to their authority. The tone of their previous correspondence suggested they were displeased, but I hoped they might also recognize the significance of what I had created. A few days later, a formal letter arrived in my mailbox, its envelope bearing the HOA's emblem, a mere piece of paper that seemed to carry the weight of their collective authority. As I opened it, my heart raced with anticipation and apprehension. The letter was meticulously crafted, outlining their concerns in a tone that was both authoritative and disapproving. The HOA acknowledged that while individual expression was important, they deemed my statue to be excessive and detrimental to the overall aesthetic of our neighborhood. They cited specific guidelines regarding outdoor decorations that focused on maintaining uniformity and decorum within our community. Their argument hinged on the belief that my statue could set a precedent for other homeowners to follow suit, potentially leading to an influx of similarly oversized or unconventional decorations that would disrupt the carefully curated image they had worked hard to uphold. Reading through their concerns felt frustratingly familiar. It was as if they were reiterating points I had already anticipated. However, what struck me most was their insistence on referencing property values, a recurring theme in HOA discussions. To them, maintaining property values equated to preserving an idealized version of suburban life, where conformity reigned supreme over creativity. The letter concluded with a request for me to either remove the statue or submit an official appeal outlining why it should remain in place. They hinted at potential repercussions if I chose not to comply. Fines or even legal action loomed over me like a dark cloud threatening to overshadow this newfound sense of liberation I had fought so hard to achieve. I spent a considerable amount of time wrestling with how best to respond. Should I comply with their demands and remove the statue? Or should I push back further? The thought of dismantling something that represented so much more than just an ornament felt unbearable. After all, this statue was not merely a piece of art. It stood as a symbol of resistance against conformity and a celebration of individuality. Fueled by determination and support from my neighbors who had rallied behind my vision, I decided not to back down. Instead, I began drafting an appeal that would articulate my perspective on why the statue deserved its place in our community. Drawing upon conversations from the recent gathering and feedback from supportive neighbors, I crafted an argument highlighting how art could foster connection and dialogue rather than division. In my appeal, I emphasized several key points. First, that art is an essential part of human expression and contributes positively to community identity. Second, that instead of detracting from property values, the statue could enhance our neighborhood's uniqueness and attract visitors who appreciated creativity. And finally, that it had already sparked meaningful conversations among residents about individuality, a conversation that could lead to greater understanding amongst us all. I knew this letter needed to be more than just a defense. It needed to invite dialogue. Thus, I proposed initiating a community forum where residents could gather to discuss art in our neighborhood openly and explore how we might celebrate diversity while honoring shared values. As I sealed the envelope containing my appeal, anticipation bubbled within me. This was more than just paperwork. It was a call for change. I hoped that presenting my case in this manner might open avenues for compromise rather than conflict. Days turned into weeks as I waited for a response from the HOA. In that time, conversations around a statue continued in our neighborhood. Many residents expressed support for my efforts and even suggested ways we could collectively advocate for greater artistic freedom within our community guidelines. Meanwhile, some staunch supporters of uniformity remained skeptical, but were beginning to accept that perhaps a balance could be struck between individual expression and maintaining property aesthetics. Finally, a reply arrived from the HOA, this time even more formal than before. Their board had reviewed my appeal and agreed to hold a special meeting where homeowners could voice their opinions regarding my statue and its implications for our community's future. The letter expressed appreciation for my willingness to engage in dialogue, but maintained their position on the necessity of adhering to existing guidelines. The upcoming meeting filled me with both excitement and anxiety. It would serve as a platform for discussing not just my statue, but broader themes surrounding identity within our neighborhood. It felt like an opportunity, a chance not only for me, but for everyone who yearned for creative expression amidst rules designed to maintain control. As I prepared my thoughts for this meeting, crafting compelling arguments while practicing articulating my vision, I realized this journey had evolved into something greater than myself. It wasn't merely about defending one whimsical sculpture. It was about championing diversity and expression within a community striving towards conformity. On the day of the meeting, neighbors gathered in numbers larger than expected. Eager voices filled the room as we prepared to delve into discussions about art's place in shaping our identity as a community. With every voice raised in support or concern regarding artistic expression resonating throughout those walls, we stood united, not just as individuals living side by side, but as champions advocating for change together. As the debate over my 14-foot statue unfolded within our neighborhood, it didn't take long for the story to catch the attention of local media. The combination of a defiant homeowner, an oversized whimsical statue, and the stringent stance of the Homeowners Association created a narrative that was too compelling for journalists to resist. Soon, reporters began reaching out to me, eager to cover the unfolding saga. The first inquiry came from a local newspaper, intrigued by the unusual circumstances surrounding my statue. They wanted to know how this installation had ignited such passionate discussions among residents and what it represented for community identity. I agreed to an interview, excited yet apprehensive about how my words might be interpreted by a wider audience. After all, I was not just advocating for my piece of art, I was championing a movement toward individuality in a community that often prioritized conformity. When the article was published, I was pleasantly surprised by the positive reception it garnered. The reporter had captured not only my perspective, but also the voices of several supportive neighbors who shared their thoughts on art as an essential aspect of personal expression. The piece painted a picture of a community at a crossroads, one that was grappling with a tension between maintaining property values and embracing creativity. As word spread through social media and neighborhood groups about the article, more media outlets began to take notice. A local television station reached out for an on-camera interview, and I found myself preparing to share my story with even more people. Standing in front of the camera felt surreal. It was one thing to discuss my statue with neighbors, but quite another to present my case to a broader audience. During the interview, I spoke passionately about why I believed art should have a place in our community. I shared how the statue had already sparked conversations among my neighbors about individuality and expression, while serving as a reminder that our homes can reflect who we are. As I spoke, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. This wasn't merely about defending my right to decorate. It was about encouraging others to embrace their uniqueness without fear of judgment. The media coverage quickly turned into something more significant than I had anticipated. My story resonated with others beyond our neighborhood. People began sharing their own experiences with HOAs and their struggles for creative freedom in communities across the region. Social media platforms lit up with comments from individuals expressing solidarity and support for my cause, many sharing similar stories of battles fought against restrictive regulations. The exposure also led to discussions on various online forums about HOA policies and whether they stifle creativity in residential areas. Some viewers expressed concern that my statue might symbolize a slippery slope toward chaos in neighborhoods governed by strict rules. However, many others rallied behind me, emphasizing that embracing individuality shouldn't come at the expense of community standards, but rather enhance them. As interest grew, several art organizations contacted me, offering support and resources for promoting artistic expression within neighborhoods governed by HOAs. They proposed hosting workshops or community events centered around art, opportunities for residents to engage creatively and explore ways to beautify their living spaces while respecting shared guidelines. In parallel with this newfound support, I also noticed some backlash from staunch HOA supporters who felt threatened by the attention my statue was receiving. They voiced concerns in comment sections beneath articles or social media posts, insisting that individualism should not come at the cost of community standards. While their viewpoints were valid in many respects, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. This wasn't merely about disregarding rules. It was about initiating meaningful dialogue around reimagining those very rules to accommodate diversity without sacrificing cohesion. Despite mixed opinions swirling around me, one thing became clear. My fight for artistic expression had struck a chord within our community and beyond. The media's involvement had transformed this situation into something larger, a discussion transcending mere aesthetics and delving into what it means to live authentically within neighborhoods defined by regulations. As interviews piled up and articles continued circulating online, I found myself reflecting on how far this journey had taken me. From an initial love for a small lawn gnome that became banned to standing proudly beside a large statue representing individuality against conformity. It felt surreal to witness how one person's determination could ignite conversations that resonated with so many others grappling with similar challenges. With continued media attention came invitations to speak at local events focused on art advocacy and community engagement. This newfound platform allowed me not only to share my story, but also amplify the voices of others who yearn for creative freedom amidst restrictive environments. As more residents engaged with these conversations, some coming forward with their artistic aspirations, I realized this journey had grown into something transformative, not just for me, but for everyone involved. Through our collective efforts fueled by dialogue stirred up from media coverage, we were paving pathways toward redefining what it meant to belong within our communities while celebrating diversity. With each passing day fueled by momentum born from conversations sparked through news coverage, the movement toward embracing individuality within our neighborhood gained traction, reminding us all that creativity thrives when nurtured rather than stifled. As the media coverage surrounding my 14-foot statue continued to gain momentum, it ignited a broader public debate about HOA rules and their implications for individual expression within our community. The conversations that began at my neighborhood gathering had expanded far beyond the confines of our streets, drawing attention from residents in other neighborhoods and even individuals who had no direct connection to our community. The issue struck a chord, resonating with many who felt stifled by similar regulations imposed by their own HOAs. One evening, I received an unexpected invitation to participate in a local town hall meeting dedicated to discussing HOA policies. The organizers wanted to create a platform for residents to voice their opinions on the balance between maintaining property values and fostering creativity. As I prepared for this opportunity, I was both excited and anxious. This was not just a chance to advocate for my statue. It was an opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue about the role of HOAs in shaping our communities. The town hall meeting drew a diverse crowd: homeowners, renters, HOA board members, and even representatives from local art organizations. As I took my seat among them, I felt the weight of expectation on my shoulders. My journey had transformed me into a reluctant spokesperson for artistic freedom, and I was determined to represent not just my views but those of my neighbors who longed for a more inclusive approach to community living. When it was finally my turn to speak, I shared my story, how the initial ban on my lawn gnome had propelled me into this unexpected battle for creative expression. I articulated how my statue represented more than just an oversized figure. It symbolized individuality and the right to express oneself without fear of retribution. As I spoke passionately about the importance of art in fostering community identity, I could see nods of agreement from various attendees. However, not everyone was convinced. Some HOA board members expressed concerns about allowing too much individual expression under the guise of art. They argued that maintaining a cohesive community aesthetic was essential for preserving property values and ensuring that all homeowners adhered to a shared vision. Their points were valid. After all, too much divergence could lead to chaos if not managed properly. But as I listened to their arguments, something pivotal shifted within me. I realized that this debate wasn't simply about aesthetics or property values. It was about identity and belonging. How could we honor individual expression while still respecting shared community standards? This question lingered in the air like an unspoken challenge. As discussions unfolded, other residents began sharing their own experiences with HOAs, stories of battles fought over seemingly trivial decorations or landscaping choices that had led to conflicts within their neighborhoods. One resident recounted how they had been fined for planting flowers deemed too colorful. Another spoke about their frustration with restrictions on outdoor furniture that clashed with the HOA's rigid guidelines. These testimonies underscored a growing sentiment. Many residents felt disempowered by regulations that seemed arbitrary and disconnected from their desires for self-expression. It became clear that the underlying issue extended beyond my statue. It was about creating spaces where individuality could flourish without fear of reprisal. As voices continued to rise in support of more flexible regulations regarding artistic expression, I felt a wave of hope wash over me. Perhaps this moment marked the beginning of a shift, a chance for us all to redefine what it meant to live harmoniously together while celebrating differences rather than suppressing them. In response to these discussions, one HOA board member suggested forming a committee tasked with reviewing existing rules related to outdoor decor and landscaping. This proposal sparked excitement among attendees who saw an opportunity for collaboration rather than conflict, a chance to work together toward crafting guidelines that balanced individual expression with communal cohesion. As conversations continued throughout the evening, it became apparent that this public debate had transformed into something larger than any one person's fight against an HOA ban. It highlighted our collective desire for change, a longing for communities that embrace diversity rather than stifle creativity in favor of conformity. By the end of the town hall meeting, there was palpable energy in the room, a sense that we were on the cusp of redefining how we viewed artistic expression within our neighborhoods. Discussions turned toward potential initiatives we could undertake as residents, organizing local art fairs showcasing homegrown talent, hosting workshops focused on creative landscaping ideas while abiding by HOA guidelines, or even establishing neighborhood mural projects designed collaboratively by residents eager to contribute their voices. This public debate had opened up channels of communication previously closed off by rigid adherence to rules, a realization that perhaps our HOAs could evolve alongside us as we sought greater freedom within our homes while still valuing shared standards. As I left the meeting filled with optimism and excitement about what lay ahead, I felt grateful for this unexpected journey. From battling against a ban on my lawn gnome to becoming an advocate for artistic freedom in our community. My 14-foot statue had sparked important conversations that would continue shaping our neighborhood's identity as we collectively navigated how best to embrace individuality without losing sight of what made us all neighbors at heart. In many ways, this dialogue represented not just a turning point but also an invitation for everyone involved. An opportunity to create spaces where creativity flourishes alongside unity, a testament that when we come together as a community willing to listen and learn from one another's stories, anything is possible. As the discussion surrounding my 14-foot statue continued to unfold, the moment of truth arrived. We were on the brink of either resolution or escalation. The community had come together in ways I never imagined possible, and it was clear that our collective desire for change was resonating deeply among residents. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as the newly formed committee prepared to present their findings and recommendations regarding HOA rules related to outdoor decor. The day of the committee meeting felt monumental. Residents gathered in the community center, chatting excitedly about the potential for new guidelines that would allow for greater artistic expression while still respecting shared values. I could feel a sense of unity in the room. Neighbors who had once stood divided over my statue now shared a common goal: to foster an environment where individuality could coexist harmoniously alongside established norms. As I took my seat, I glanced around at familiar faces, many of whom had expressed both support and skepticism during previous meetings. It was heartening to see so many engaged in this dialogue, eager to explore ways we could redefine our community's identity together. When the committee began their presentation, they emphasized their commitment to finding a balance between maintaining property values and embracing creativity. They acknowledged concerns raised by HOA board members while also highlighting positive feedback from residents who felt stifled by existing regulations. Their proposal included new guidelines that would encourage artistic expression, suggesting categories for acceptable outdoor decor that allowed for personal flair without compromising neighborhood aesthetics. The audience listened intently as committee members outlined potential changes, allowing small sculptures, colorful flower arrangements, and even artistic yard signs within certain parameters. They proposed setting up an annual art fair where residents could showcase their talents and create opportunities for collaboration while celebrating our diverse community. As these ideas were discussed, I felt a swell of hope. This was not just about me anymore. It was about all of us coming together to advocate for creative freedom. Yet, amid this optimism, I sensed tension lingering beneath the surface. Some HOA board members remained skeptical, concerned that loosening restrictions could lead to chaos, a slippery slope toward an unregulated landscape filled with excessive decorations. When it came time for public comments, residents took turns expressing their thoughts. Supporters of the new guidelines spoke passionately about how important it was to celebrate individuality and creativity while remaining respectful of shared standards. They shared personal stories of how restrictive rules had stifled their ability to express themselves through their homes. However, a faction of homeowners expressed concern over potential consequences if these new guidelines were adopted. They worried that allowing more creative freedom might lead to disputes among neighbors or dilute the carefully curated image they felt defined our community. Their arguments were valid but seemed rooted in fear rather than an understanding of how art can enhance rather than detract from our collective identity. As the debate continued, I recognized that this moment was pivotal, not just for me, but for everyone invested in our community's future. I stood up and addressed the room, sharing my journey from fighting against an HOA ban on a lawn gnome to advocating for artistic expression through the statue now towering proudly in my yard. I emphasized that embracing diversity did not mean abandoning shared values. Instead, it meant enriching our community with varied perspectives. With every word, I aimed to bridge the divide between those who feared change and those who yearned for it, reminding everyone present that fostering creativity could coexist with maintaining property values if approached thoughtfully and collaboratively. In a surprising turn of events, one of the previously skeptical HOA board members spoke up after my remarks. He acknowledged his initial concerns but admitted he had been moved by hearing resident stories and recognizing how important individuality is in shaping our neighborhood's character. His willingness to reconsider his stance opened doors for further discussion among board members. By the end of the meeting, something remarkable occurred. Rather than simply voting on whether to adopt new guidelines or maintain strict regulations, attendees agreed to form a task force comprising homeowners and HOA representatives dedicated to exploring options collaboratively. This task force would work together over the coming months, collecting feedback from residents while drafting proposals that honored both individuality and community standards. As discussions wrapped up and people began leaving the meeting room, I felt a sense of exhilaration wash over me, a realization that we had transformed what could have been a contentious situation into an opportunity for meaningful dialogue and collaboration. The prospect of working together as neighbors toward common goals filled me with hope. In those final moments before departing, I reflected on how far this journey had taken me, from being a homeowner fighting against conformity to becoming part of a larger movement advocating for creative expression within our community. The statue had sparked conversations that transcended aesthetics. It had united us in pursuit of defining who we are as individuals living harmoniously side by side. In the weeks following that pivotal meeting, excitement rippled through our neighborhood as we took steps toward embracing change, a shift toward recognizing art's role in shaping identity within communities governed by regulations designed initially for order rather than creativity. While some challenges lay ahead regarding implementing these new guidelines effectively, balancing individual expression with maintaining property values, the path forward felt promising, a testament that when we come together as neighbors willing to listen and learn from one another's stories, anything is possible. Whether this journey led us toward complete resolution or merely marked the beginning of ongoing discussions about artistic freedom within our neighborhood, it didn't matter. What mattered was how far we'd come together as a community ready not just to defend individual expression but celebrate it wholeheartedly. Then,